Why is all of this happening? How did we get where we are? First, skilled writing is complex. It requires extensive self-regulation of a flexible, goal-directed, problem-solving activity. You need knowledge about writing, including genre knowledge. You need strategies for planning, text production, editing, and revising. Teaching writing is similarly demanding, and most of our teachers report being very poorly prepared to teach writing, and they report lower efficacy for teaching writing than for any other subject they teach. The lower a teacher's efficacy for both writing and for teaching writing are, the less time that teacher spends teaching writing. Classroom after classroom after classroom that we're in, we hear the same thing from teachers. When something has to go, it's writing. Even for skilled writers, writing is not easy. Kellogg said, writing is the mental equivalent of digging ditches. Fox, a famous sports writer, once said, writing is simple. Just sit down at the typewriter and open a vein. Dr. Suess said, every sentence is like pangs of birth. Now, I don't know how he would know, but I do like the sentiment. Today, when I talk about writing and what writing demands of our children and adolescents and even of adults, I think a lot about conducting an orchestra. I used to talk about learning to ride a bike or learning jazz, where you had to have basic skills first and then you could riff and twist with the melody. But I think it's even harder than that. Just like we don't put a child on a bike after watching other children ride their bikes around, give them a shove and say, go, we don't put children in front of paper, put a pencil in their hand and say, write. It's not going to work. It's going to be hurtful to the child's self-esteem. It's going to result in failure and frustration, and that will further result in a lot less interest in writing and a lot less motivation to write. First of all, when you're getting that orchestra ready to go, you have to know so much about so much. Just like the conductor has to know every instrument in the orchestra, each musician in the orchestra, and how they work together, the writer has to understand oneself as a writer. What skills, abilities, and strategies do I have at my command? What don't I know yet? What's emerging for me? I have to understand the writing task, the genre. I need to be the master of mechanics, form, skills, and strategies. And I need to understand my own affect for writing. How do I persevere when I'm tired of it? What do I do when my motivation is low? How do I keep myself going in the face of difficulty? Then I have to bring all this knowledge about myself as a writer online, and next, I have to tune up all of the following as if they were instruments and musicians in my orchestra and bring them together to create incredibly rich, harmonious music. I have to evaluate the writing task. I have to determine my goals for writing. Some of my goals are simple and easy and nearby. Others are much more distal, harder to get to, will take a lot of work to reach. I need to consider my reader. What emotional impact do I want to have on my reader? What characteristics of text do I want to use? What skills and strategies are needed? And select among alternative strategies at my disposal. I have to identify the environmental conditions that can be addressed to make writing conducive. I personally don't write well in silence. My husband, on the other hand, doesn't write well in noise. This is why our offices are on 2 different floors of our home. I have to manage cognitive load. I have to manage my working memory and my long-term memory. And finally, I do have to manage my affective responses to writing, attentional control, time management, and the desire to quit. And it might seem like regulating the writing process and regulating yourself as a writer can't be that hard or aren't that difficult, but it turns out that research has shown us this is core to effective writing, and it is difficult, and our children and adolescents and even adults need assistance developing critical self-regulation skills to use during the writing process. Let's take a look at some examples of failure to self-regulate writing. I think we should have a little fun today as well as work on the serious stuff. These are all real examples from students. I love this one. Homer also wrote the Odyssey, in which Penelope was the last hardship that Ulysses endured on his journey. no sensitivity to the reader, no sensitivity to how the reader will interpret that sentence, and no evaluation of if it's actually saying what the writer intended to say. And I don't think that was it. Here's another one of my favorites. Socrates was a famous Greek teacher who went around giving people advice. They killed him. I often use this one as a title when I'm presenting or writing. And my last one for today, and another one of my most favorites, Bach was the most famous composer in the world, and so was Handel. Handel was half German, half Italian, and half English. Now wait for it. He was very large. So we've established that learning to write is difficult and writing is difficult. I think we can safely say today, based on the research base we have and without equivocation, that writing does not develop naturally, but it can be taught. One of the myths that we have been exposed to for the last 20 to 30 years is that writing should develop like talking, and that talking develops naturally with little instruction, just a rich environment. And there could be nothing further from the truth about talking either. I want you to stop and think about it. Anytime a baby is around, look at the people around that baby and look at how they interact with that child. Whether it's a parent, a stranger, or a sibling, they coo at the baby. They make sounds at the baby for the baby to imitate. If a baby tries to say a word, they support it, they repronounce it, they help the baby make that word. When the young child starts putting words together and making sentences, there's someone there always supporting, helping, keying, scaffolding, helping that child make language. In fact, I think you would be hard put to come up with a single, more scaffolded learning experience in your life than the way you learned to talk.